What's up guys, Connor with Guns and Stuff here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about my Japanese Type 99 rifles. We're going to go into a little bit of history. I'm going to tell you a little bit about both of mine, but to start the video I figured we would do some 500 yard shooting with my Type 99 here. Before I start shooting, I have some Steinel ammo. It actually says Xcaliber on the box. Formerly this company was Xcaliber, but they're making a transition because there's a lot of other companies that as Xcaliber barrels or anything kind of similar to that. So be sure to check them out. Let's see if we can hit the target here at 500 yards. All right, Evan, you good?
We're good. Right.
I think that was to the right, I think.
Yes, sir.
You good?
Good. Also right, low.
Low and to the right?
Yep. Did not see.
Anything?
High right. No impact.
Was that a hit?
Yes.
Go ahead and load up some more ammo here. This is 174 grain. If I could get the box open. Go ahead and load 5 more up. So I think that was one hit.
That was right side of the top orange target. Near
Consistently
center.
right with this one. All right, Evan, you good?
Good.
That was a hit.
Impact. Impact. Impact.
I think that was a hit.
I want to say yes.
All right, last round here.
Impact.
Cool. Cool, so I think we got about 50%. I think it was 5 out of 10 hits, maybe 6. But for a what, 75-year-old rifle, I'll take it. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna, like I said, talk a little bit about the history about this rifle and show you guys a little bit about my two. So let's go over and do that. So throughout this video, you're gonna hear me refer to the Type 30, the Type 35 maybe once or twice, the Type 38, and then also the Type 99s. So contrary to popular belief, the Type 99, the Type 38, and the Type 35 are not Arisaka rifles. The name has kind of just been synonymous with these rifles in history, but in fact they were not really designed by Arisaka, which we're going to talk about. So the Type 30 is an Arisaka because that rifle was designed by a man named Nariakira Arisaka. Forgive my Japanese, I know it's not very good. And 2 others. So the years went on and they had the Type 35. Kojiro Nambu was actually put in charge of making changes to the Type 30 rifle because Arisaka got promoted and he went on to bigger and better things. So Nambu actually made some changes to the Type 30, which became the Type 35. The Type 35 really wasn't in Japanese service that long. So from the Type 35, they went to the Type 38. Now the Type 38, the main difference is pretty much they wanted to simplify the bolt from the Type 35, and they wanted to add a dust cover from the Type 35. The dust cover on the Type 35 was really not that good, and Nambu really didn't like it. So they have the Type 38, which was, they had millions of those guns made. So if you've ever seen a Type 38, that's what it is. It's a Arisaka rifle, not an Arisaka, it's a Nambu rifle chambered in 6.5. So that rifle was in World War I and many, many other conflicts in between. So fast forward to 1939, Japan was fighting in Asia, China and Korea and stuff like that. So they had a machine gun that shot the 7.7 by 58 millimeter cartridge, and Japan pretty much knew that they were going to get into bigger conflicts, so they wanted an infantry rifle that shot that 7.7 caliber projectile. So what they did is they pretty much took the Type 38, rechambered it, and made a few other changes. So the main difference in the Type 38 and the Type 99 is caliber. The Type 99 fires a 7.7, like I just said. It's more lethal and it has a longer range. The rifle was designed in 1939. Originally, the Type 99 was going to be in the long rifle version that the Type 99 is, or the Type 38, excuse me, is in. And if any of you have ever seen a Type 38, it's really, really long. And then they were going to have a carbine version, which had a 20-inch barrel. And I guess the Japanese military, they wanted something right in the middle. So they ended up going with the short rifle, which is this configuration here. It's a pretty average size rifle for all the World War II, what we know today as surplus rifles. Fun fact about the Type 99, this was actually the first military rifle mass-produced that featured a chrome-lined bore, chrome-lined chamber, and a chrome-lined bolt face. So, fun fact about this, there were 3 main arsenals that produced the Type 99, but throughout the war that increased to 9. There were 7 in Japan, 1 in Korea, and 1 in China. Alright, so I got the Series 33 Togyo Arisaka. I'm going at a full-size steel plate at 300 yards. As you guys can see, this magazine is kind of falling apart here. Let's get some hits, hopefully. Ooh, man, this magazine. Yeah, that bullet just popped right up out of the magazine. Definitely easier than 500 yards. Okay, so one thing that's really cool about the Arisakas that's kind of unique is the bolt is very simple to take apart. On the Type 30 Arisaka, it was a little bit more complex, and when Nambu actually went to the Arisaka, they simplified the bolt from the 30 to the 35 to the 38, and it carried over to the 99. So if you're familiar with 1903s or Mausers or anything, it can be kind of confusing. Not confusing, there's a lot of parts, but on the Arisakas, which is cool, you press in, rotate, maybe, yep, and then you have all your main components there. So the ejector can come off as well. You just slide it up and it comes right off. But after the ejector and this little part here that twists the ejector, there's 6 parts to this bolt. So, I mean, that's pretty cool, especially, you know, back in those days, they needed to simplify things. So that is what Japan did. They simplified their bolts. And let's see if I can put this back together correctly. And then twist it, maybe. Somewhere over here. There we go. So then your bolt is back together. And you can put it back in your rifle. You're good to go. Another thing I want to talk about that's pretty cool is the safety on the Arisaka rifle. So typically on like Mausers and 1903 Springfields and I believe Enfields, they have it's just kind of a lever, I'll show you on my 1903, that you flip one side to the other for safety. This is actually pretty cool because you just rotate this knob here to the right, and now the rifle's on safe, actually. Now it's on safe, so the bolt won't move, trigger won't pull. And they did this because it was for, instead of fine motor control with your fingers, they wanted it to be kind of more of a just use your whole hand type thing. So that's something that's pretty unique with the Arisaka or the Type 99, is they got this big kind of cool safety on the back of it. That's something I think is pretty cool. So one thing I want to show you guys here is the stock is actually 2 pieces. So this is all one piece, but you can see here there's a pretty big line. So what they did was the stock was actually 2-piece, and how they held that together was, you can see the tang here, I guess, is really long. So there's a screw in here that actually goes up into the stock. These are actually, the lower and upper part of the stock are actually dovetailed together, so they're not just going to come loose. And then the butt plate as well holds it together. So that's something kind of interesting about the Arisaka. When I got my first one, I had a big line in it, and I was like, oh man, you know, my Arisaka was broken at one time or another, but that is not true. All the Arisakas have a 2-piece stock. So with the Type 99, you often hear the term last ditch. That term, where it is true, there were last ditch rifles, but there was a huge transitional period in the middle of the war that pretty much, in short, it doesn't go right from the Arisaka or the Type 99 with all the bells and whistles to the last ditch. There were a lot of transitions made, and each arsenal didn't do changes at the same time. So you might see an Arisaka that is made in, let's say, early 1945, where it should be missing a lot of stuff, but it's not, or vice versa. Arsenals did things different at different times. There's not really a set schedule where each arsenal made changes all at the same time. And pretty much they did that throughout the war just to kind of simplify production and save cost and save resources. They made changes to the rifle. A lot of other countries did this as well, like Germany with their late, I don't know a lot about the Mausers, but some of the late Mausers, and also the 1903s, actually, we didn't do it as dramatically as Japan did, but they pretty much went to more stamped parts and stuff like that. So Japan's not the only country that did that. Okay, so before we start talking about the transitional rifles or the last ditch rifles, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the 2 that I have. So this one is the lighter one. That's how you guys might be able to remember it. So this one this was made at the Toyo Kogyo Arsenal, which was actually not far from Hiroshima. So when the bombs dropped, that arsenal was actually, it wasn't destroyed, but a lot of the factory workers were actually killed. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I guess that arsenal, after that happened, was they kind of used it as a field hospital for the next few days or weeks or whatever. Both of these guns were made there. Now, Toyo Kogyo is actually now Mazda. So Mazda was the subcontractor for these rifles in World War II. It's kind of an interesting fact. So about this one, this is a Series 33. So this one is made later than the one I'm going to show you next. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, because there's a few things on this rifle that show that this one is older than this one. So Series 33, this one does not have a mum intact. And also, this one does not have the 99 type on the top of it, which is the Type 99 in the Japanese writing. So now you go to this one, which is actually a Series 30. So this rifle was made earlier than the light one. And again, there's a few things that kind of show that, and we'll talk about that. But same arsenal, this was made earlier. This dust cover is not the original dust cover. I believe this bolt is the original. This one, you can see here, has the 99 type on top, and it has an intact chrysanthemum. So definitely awesome rifles. So let's start talking about the changes that were made throughout the war. Neither of these rifles have a monopod, but one thing the Arisaka is kind of known for is this monopod that used to hang down. That was the first thing to go. The very first Type 99s that were early made had all the bells and whistles. They had a metal butt plate, they had the dust cover on top, so it had the anti-aircraft sights, it had the monopod, it had everything. The first thing to go was the monopod. So you'll see some Arisakas like this one, and I think this had a monopod added on it on one time, but it's gone. It actually has the lugs for the monopod, so they didn't change this rear barrel band, but they just didn't include the monopod. So that's something that went first. And then the next thing to go would have been the cleaning rod. This Type 99 does not have the cleaning rod. It has it since I've had the rifle. But what they had was, it was a full-sized cleaning rod that went all the way back, and there's a little push button here that you would push and the rod would come right out. So instead of that, what they did is they went to a short cleaning rod, which you guys can see this one has one. So you unscrew it here. There's no more button, it's just threaded in. And the cleaning rod is a short cleaning rod, so pretty much they would just kind of use this as a sinker in the barrel, drop it and pull it through. So let's go ahead and thread that back in. The next major thing to go away on the Type 99 was the anti-aircraft sights. Now, some of you might be laughing about this, like, anti-aircraft sights, what are they going to do, shoot down planes with these sights? Well, before Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, they were in China fighting, and the Chinese pilots were not very trained. They had old, slow biplanes and things like that. So with the slow, low-moving aircraft with untrained pilots, they would use these in volley fire to try to take down planes. Now, fast forward in the Pacific, where we have, you know, Corsairs and Hellcats and stuff like that, these were not even used. So they took away just the wings here, so they still had the big lugs, but the anti-aircraft sights went away. So now, mid-1943 to kind of mid-1944, around there, again, the arsenals did things at different times, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly when these things happened. The long rear sight, which are both of these, were changed to a more shortened rear sight. The safety knob here was knurled. I'll show you mine. They're very kind of like texturing everywhere. They went to just diagonal texturing, probably just to save time, to get them, you know, on the rifles and out into the field faster. So that second kind of group of changes was nothing really that crazy, just the safety, and the sight was shortened. And then also they changed the shape of the knob. This is kind of looks like an egg, and what they did was they just made it more of a, I guess it almost looks like a beer keg, kind of, not really like a K31, but I'll show you a photo of that. So that second batch of changes was nothing really that crazy. Now when you start getting into late 1944 and 45, that's when things kind of, that's when your typical last ditch rifle you're thinking of, that's when that was in effect. So what they did was they went away from the protected front sight. So they got rid of these wings up top, so it was just the front sight. There was no cleaning rod at all, so not even the short sinker one, so it looked something like this. There was no cleaning rod at all fielded. I guess they would have a unit cleaning supplies, or unit, you know, cleaning rods and stuff to clean their weapons. Now at this point, the front barrel band was a lot more simple to make. It was, I don't really know necessarily what they did, but it was just faster and it wasn't as nice looking, I guess. Also the rear barrel band, the welds were very visible. They just kind of slapped them together, and also you can see there's a cut in this rear barrel band. The cut was no longer there, so they just kept that piece of steel in there, again, just to save, you know, steel or resources or time. And then what they did next was they actually did not stamp the 9.9 type on top of the receiver, which is kind of interesting on this particular rifle, because this is a later Arisaka right here. It has all of the features that would say it's kind of mid-war. You have the protected front sight, you still have the cleaning rod, you still have the tall sight, but they didn't stamp 9.9 type or Type 99 on top of the receiver, which I find very interesting, just to show you that some of the arsenals were, you know, doing things differently. Whereas, you know, this is an earlier one, so it has the 99 type on top, but yeah. And then really late in the war, they went to this handguard. The top handguard here was not even there, so it was just an exposed barrel to save wood. They went away from the ladder sight totally, so the anti-aircraft sights were gone, the ladder sights were gone. It was just a simple fixed peep sight, so there was no adjusting. It was what you got is what you got. The machining on the bolts were much rougher. Also, very late in the war, the safeties were not nearly as nice as this. It just kind of looks like a glob of just welded metal. And then they had the wooden butt plates. So these are both steel butt plates, but what they did was they just had a wooden butt plate that was held on with 3 screws. And as time went on, really late in the war, they actually only used 2 screws. So they would save 1 screw, you know, they would save screws and keep the material for other things. The rear sling swivel here was actually only held on by 1 screw. So notice these both have 2 screws. There was only 1. That was very late in the war as well. Now, what the next changes I'm going to tell you are pretty much the typical last ditch rifles that people think of. So again, you have to remember it was just a fixed sight, unprotected front sight. The handguard was gone up here. The bolts were a lot rougher than they were. They had wooden butt plates with 2 nails. So now you're going to get into, they didn't even have a sling swivel on the back of their rifle. And these are very late, very rare guns. They're called rope hole Arisakas. Pretty much what soldiers were to do is to have rope, and they would tie a knot, put it through, and put it up here. So there's literally a big hole in the stock. Those are very rare. There was no groove for the dust cover, so the dust covers were gone, and there wasn't even a groove in the receiver for it, so the receiver forging changed very late in the war as well. They even got to the point where some late rifles didn't even have serial numbers, so you can actually find Arisakas that have no serial number at all, only the arsenal markings. I think I hit most of the things there pretty well. The Arisaka went through a ton of changes throughout World War II. If you look at 1, 2, 3, 4 Arisakas, you're probably going to see major differences between all of them. Now, there's that kind of misconception that very late Arisakas are not safe to shoot. I don't know, because I don't have any late Arisakas, but if you watch on YouTube, there's some people, experts, that say they are safe to shoot, others that wouldn't do it. I probably wouldn't buy one just to shoot a lot of rounds through it, but that's just something to keep in mind. So contrary to popular belief, the dust cover was actually not removed by Japanese soldiers. This is, with my research, all the stuff I could find is, if the Japanese soldier didn't have his rifle in tip-top shape with everything that came with it, he would be punished severely, I guess. So most of the time when you find an Arisaka without a dust cover, it's from an American soldier or someone, you know, in the past, whatever, down the line, that actually removed it because it was kind of noisy, which if you're running the action, I don't even think it really makes that big of a difference at all, but it can get in the way, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to put back on the rifle. So that's kind of a common misconception that people have, is the Japanese soldiers, they left it on their guns. Also, you hear stories of, this is kind of stories I've heard in the past, you hear a lot of older guys say that the Arisakas, they're not safe to shoot, even any of them, that they're weak rifles. This is simply not true. From all the research I've done, there's been a lot of people that say this is one of the strongest and overbuilt kind of receivers and actions that all of the war had seen. So I just don't think that's true. What a lot of that is there were training rifles that were made to only shoot wooden bullets, and this was for training purposes. And what people think happened is the American soldiers or whoever picked them up and they went to shoot them, they were shooting guns that weren't supposed to be shooting actual ammunition, and the guns would blow up, because if it's not designed to shoot real ammo, it's going to blow up. So that's another kind of misconception there. So now there's a few kind of stories on how the chrysanthemum actually got ground off the rifle. What the chrysanthemum was it was a stamp that went on the top of the receivers of any Japanese rifle, and pretty much what that did was it said that the rifle was property of the Japanese emperor, or the empire. Yeah, emperor, I'm sorry. So what some people say is that, and I don't know if this is necessarily true, this is just what I've heard, is that when soldiers would come home from overseas when the war was over and they had their rifles that they brought back, there was actually like a station there that the soldiers were expected to go to ground off the chrysanthemum. I don't know how true that is. I kind of find that hard to believe. This one has it intact, this one does not. And I'm pretty sure if the rifle stayed in Japan, they all had to go back to some sort of a facility and they ground them off. So the ones with the chrysanthemums are a little bit harder to find, and I definitely think they're cooler, but that's just kind of a little story that I heard about the chrysanthemum. So I thought it would be worth adding in this video the story of how I acquired this Type 99. So I used to work in a restaurant, and one of the guys that I worked with came up to me, and he knew I was into guns and firearms, and he said, "Hey, I have this Arisaka at my house. I want you to come over and look at it." And I was like, "Of course, I'll be there." So I go over to his house, he brings me up this Arisaka, and there were parts missing, and it was pretty rough. It did not look anything like this. I cleaned the stock up. It was not very good looking. So we look, he's like, what's it worth? Asking me all these questions, and he goes, "How about this? Why don't you take it home with you? You order me up the parts I need, get it working, bring it back and then I'll just reimburse you for fixing it up. And I was like, yeah, sure. So, you know, I'm super excited. I take it home, order up all the parts, get it working. And he goes, next time we work together, you know, I went in and he was like, how's the Arisaka? And I said, you know, I ordered the parts up. And he goes, you know what, why don't you just hold on to it? And I was like, no, like, are you serious? He was like, yeah, just hold on to the rifle because you will appreciate it a lot more than I will. And I asked him like a bunch. I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? And he said, yeah, just keep it. So that is how I acquired this gun. What he told me is that his stepfather brought this particular rifle back from Vietnam. So which is really cool because this wasn't brought back from World War II. This was actually brought back from Vietnam. So in the time from it being in Japan up until the mid or late 60s, who knows where this rifle could have been or what conflicts it could have seen. I think it's very fascinating how, I don't know, just if only guns could speak and you could actually know where they've been and what they've seen and things like that. So this particular one is pretty cool because it's not from World War II. Well, it is, but it was brought back in Vietnam and not World War II. So something I thought I should add in this video. So yeah, guys, thanks for sticking around for this probably pretty lengthy video on the Arisaka. I've always found the Arisaka very interesting. I don't know why. Ever since I was a kid, I've always kind of been fascinated by Japan and World War II. I used to be big into airplanes, so like the Zero at one time was like my favorite airplane, and I just kind of was always interested in their weapons and their technology and stuff. So if you like this kind of a video where it's almost more of a history lesson, let me know. If this isn't really your thing, let me know. Just be cool about it. It took a lot of time to get all this research done. So if you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Comment down in the bottom if you know anything else about the Arisaka or anything I forgot. I hope I got everything. A lot of stuff to remember here. But yeah, guys, my Type 99 Arisakas, I got a few hits on 500 today with these rifles, so that was really awesome. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.